fishingfloridawater.com episode. We're going to be talking about the Baitcaster and if it's the right reel for you or not. So, starting off, this reel is a popular reel style used by a lot of professional anglers who do a lot of the professional tournament things, for whether it's going out on a lake doing a tournament fishing for largemouth bass, or whether they're popular freshwater tournaments they use them for. I know here in Florida they're pretty popular for like freshwater fishing. They do have a bit of a learning curve because of the fact that some of the features on them require them to be adjusted accordingly to the different type of baits you're going to be using. So if you change one bait out, it may not work correctly as it's supposed to unless you make a proper adjustments with some of the features on the reel. So another thing too, and I'll talk more about those features, is taking consideration is that if you're planning to buy a Baitcaster, that the handle on these Baitcaster reels are normally fixed in this position so that they cannot be changed on one side to the other. And with that being said, though, I'm going to talk to you about some of the features about this reel. Two are the key features that I'm going to be talking about on this reel. The first one is going to be this red knob here, which is known as the spool tension knob. Okay, adjusting this, making it too loose, will cause your spool to be able to freely move too fast, so that if you were to take this reel and the spool knob, tension knob, was too loose on it, and you had a heavy bait on it, and you went and made the cast, chances are the minute you throw out the line or can make the cast, what's going to happen is one or two things are going to happen. Either you're going to get a bird's nest or backlash just as fast as you try to cast it out, or as soon as it hits the water, that's when you're going to get your backlash or bird's nest in this reel. And that is when the whole area inside the spool here will just completely wad up with fishing line, and it could even puff out too, to the point that you have to sit here and pluck out line like this, for a long period of time until you get the bird's nest under control and you're able to fix it. Some people don't have that type of time to sit here and pull on the spool to try to get the line, knots all out and the bird's nest all untangled. So making sure that the spool tension knob on the reel is important, that you have that set just correctly for each time you're changing out any lures, baits, or whatever you're going to be using. Because, for example, if you were to use like a live worm with this type of reel, and you were to cast it out and leave it out there, or a rubber worm for that matter, and you just throw it out there, well, the spool tension knob might not need to be as loose, or it may need to be a little bit more loose so that you can get a distance. Most of the professionals, when they're using this type of setup with this reel, is they will feather the line so that when they go to make the cast, as soon as they cast, they're kind of thumbing the spool lightly, so that only like a hair of the finger is actually touching this spool. So they're kind of like a little feather touch on the spool, so it's kind of just barely touching the line, but enough that it's kind of slowing the spin of the spool down, so that when it finally hits the water, they're gonna put full pressure on the spool majority of the time. Maybe not always, but they're gonna put enough pressure on the spool that it stops the spool from spinning, and then they'll probably lightly lift up their fingers so that the line will sink faster, and then go ahead and do the retrieve for the reel. You have your star drag, which is just basically how tight you want the drag, and the star drag is basically the thing next to the handle. It looks like a star, so it looks. Loosening it, tightening it will make it so that if you're gonna have it tight, then it's harder for the fish to try to fight by being able to go out. If it's a bigger fish, the drag, no matter how tight it is, locked down, it's still gonna be able to pull. Which is why it's always a good idea to make sure you're fishing with the right size reel for a certain fish you're going for. If you're going to go for big fish, you don't want to use a small bait caster. It's going to be destroyed by a big bass, for example. And you do have your brake, which works with the spool tension knob. So there's normally numbers sometimes on the brake part, which is like a dial that you would dial on how close you want the brake to be on the spool. The higher the number, the more tighter it's going to pull the spool tighter. And the lower the number, the less pressure is going to be on the spool to be pulled. Sometimes you get some more expensive bait casters will have weights inside them, or a magnetic type of braking system in them for obviously slowing down the spool and stuff. But other than that, this type of reel cannot be used with a spinning reel rod. So if you're gonna want a rod if you're just gonna buy just a bait caster without a rod, then you will have to buy a bait caster rod. Normally you can get bait casters that come in a combo with a rod included. If you buy them from like some sporting goods store or bait shop, they might sell them in a combo package. But this type of reel does not work out well with a spinning reel rod, because the way the rod is, it's not meant to be having its guides, the eye guides where the line runs through, having the back facing down. With a bait caster rod, the reel is going to sit on top of the rod, and then the guides are going to be facing upward, because the way the spine is for a bait caster style rod, it's designed to have that type of pressure underneath the rod, because that's the way the spine is made for it. Whereas, not to go off topic, but with a spinning reel rod, the flex is all handled from it going downward. So it's a little different with a spinning rod reel or a spinning rod. This type of the spinning reel's rod is designed differently than a bait caster type rod. So anyways, this type of reel is good for long distance casting and stuff if you master it to the ability of being able to do that. Personally, this is a reel that I would recommend to new anglers, but if you ever decide that you want to try one out, more power to you to try one out. Don't get discouraged. Just be prepared that there's a possibility that you may have a good time taking this out and you may not have any problems at all. But there is always that possibility that your first time taking this out, it could be a disaster, and you can end up with a backlash, bird's nest, and might want to bring an extra reel with you. I'm just saying, be prepared. If you're going to take a bait caster out, you have an extra backup rod reel on hand, so the bait caster doesn't hopefully ruin your day out there fishing. With that being said, though, hopefully this video has helped y'all out on your decision on buying a bait caster or getting a bait caster, some of the pros and cons to it. And if it has, feel free to subscribe to this YouTube channel. And I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you all for watching. And remember, if you have any questions for me ever, leave them in any of the videos, and I'll do my best to answer them to the best of my knowledge. See you all in the next episode.